Good afternoon, Facebook friends and YouTube followers. This is Rich again, back for your second video blog of the day for Thursday, August 21st, 2014, around 3:30 p.m. in Billerica, Massachusetts. It's been cloudy today. Sun tried to poke out. We had a low drop of rain. Highs in the low 70s. Summer's coming to an end, and soon the kids will be back to school. I know Billerica Memorial High School had their freshman orientation today for its incoming freshmen, and also tomorrow ends the 2014 summer camp for the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Billerica. I think they probably had the best summer camp ever. That's what the staff says every year, that they outdo themselves, and they say that it's the best summer camp they ever been a part of. And some news to report: FXX is showing every Simpson episode ever on their cable network. A 12-day marathon. I watched some of it. I watched the first couple of episodes, the one with the Christmas episode back in 1989, and the episode where Bart cheated on a test to become a genius, to go to a genius school. Pretty funny stuff. And 12 straight days of Simpsons on FXX. That will be a big ratings winner for that cable network, which turns 1 year old September 2nd. So that's a good way to celebrate their first year on the air. And that's about it for the news. My next subject is about a very exclusive club. It is the 500 Home Run Club. In the history of Major League Baseball, there's been 26 players to reach this prestigious milestone. The first baseball player to reach 500 home runs was New York Yankees outfielder Babe Ruth back in 1929, August 11th. He hit his 500 home run, and he was the first Major League Baseball player to do that. Before Babe Ruth was starting to hit home runs, you didn't see too many players hit home runs because it was during the dead ball era, and mainly it was pitching. Pitching was the key. But once around the 1920s happened, the balance of the game for baseball went to the hitters. And then Babe Ruth was the first player to hit 500 home runs. 11 years later, the second member of the 500 home run club, Jimmie Foxx. And the third member of the 500 home run club was Mel Ott of the New York Giants back in the late 40s. And then during the 50s, there was no players who reached the 500 home run milestones. But the 60s started to add more members. Ted Williams, Willie Mays, Mickey Mantle, Hank Aaron joined and Eddie Matthews joined the 500 home run club in the 1960s. In the 1970s, Frank Robinson, Ernie Banks, Harmon Killebrew, and Willie McCovey joined that prestigious club. In the 1980s, only two players, Reggie Jackson and Mike Smith. In the 1990s, only two more players, Eddie Murray and Mark McGwire. But during the 2000s, this club exploded with new members: Barry Bonds, Sammy Sosa, Rafael Palmeiro, Ken Griffey Jr., Frank Thomas, Alex Rodriguez, Jim Thome, Manny Ramirez, Gary Sheffield. All of those players hit 500 home runs during the first decade of the 21st century. And just a few months ago, Albert Pujols reached that milestone. 500 home runs was the ticket to many of players getting eventually in the Hall of Fame. And the first 500 home runs was a guarantee for all these players to get into a Hall of Fame. But after Eddie Murray hit his 500 home run in 1996, the players after him from 1999 onward, most of them were linked to PEDs except Ken Griffey Jr., Frank Thomas, Jim Thome. All the other players who hit at least 500 home runs or more during this time period were linked to performance-enhancing drugs. And a few of them admitted they did it, and a couple of them flunked drug tests. And when those players hit those 500 home runs who were suspected with PEDs, their Hall of Fame chances went down big time. Mainly players who have hit 500 or more home runs are usually outfielders or first basemen or third basemen. There's been very few shortstops who hit 500 home runs, but they were converted to third basemen or first basemen. There's never been a 500 home run hitter who spent the majority of his career playing second base or catcher, but there's been a lot of DHs who spend the majority of their career hitting DHs. And there's been 14 of the 26 members of the 500 home run club are right-handers, 10 were left-handers, and 2 were switch hitters. And many of the players who had 500 home runs have led the league in home runs. I think only maybe 3 never led the league in home runs. They were like Rafael Palmeiro, Frank Thomas, and Gary Sheffield. They hit 500 home runs, and they never led the league in home runs in any given season. And most of them have won MVPs, except a few. I think Jim Thome never won an MVP. Rafael Palmeiro never won an MVP. Gary Sheffield, Mark McGwire. Those are the only 500 home run hitters who's never won MVPs. And this is this was a very prestigious club to be in, but it's the club with 500 home runs. The past 15 years, the new members have been tainted a little bit with PEDs. Some of the Hall of Famers who were close to 500 home runs, at least 50 shy of 500 home runs, were Lou Gehrig, 493, Stan the Man Musial, 475, Willie Stargell, 475, Dave Winfield, 465, and Carl Yastrzemski were 452. Some of the players who also were close to 500 home runs who were no longer active: Fred McGriff were 493, Carlos Delgado were 473, and Chipper Jones were 468. Fred McGriff's eligible for the Hall of Fame, but he's never got close to 75% of the votes. Carlos Delgado will be eligible in 2015, but he's probably not going to get 5% of the votes. And also, Chipper Jones is eligible in 2018. He'll probably be a first ballot Hall of Famer. The two players in Major League Baseball who are close to 500 home runs who are active is Red Sox designated hitter David Ortiz with 461, and White Sox first baseman / outfielder / DH Adam Dunn with 459. And out of the two, David Ortiz has a better shot of making the Hall of Fame, even though David Ortiz is kind of linked to PEDs. Adam Dunn has only 41 more home runs. He might be at the end of the line, and he's not a Hall of Fame candidate because Adam Dunn strikes out a lot, and he's hit less than 250 his career. And the other players who are close to, active players who are in the 400 home run range, Paul Konerko and Nick Swisher and Alfonso Soriano, aren't going to make 500 home runs. I think Paul Konerko and Jason Giambi are going to retire after the end of this year, and I think Alfonso Soriano's at the end of the line. And then after that, the next closest to get to 500 home runs is Adrian Beltran with the Rangers, 394. He's 106 home runs short. And Miguel Cabrera of the Tigers, who's having an off year with 4 home runs. He's been injured, but he's having an off year. But I think I wouldn't be surprised if Ortiz and Dunn hit 500 home runs in the next few years. And I think Beltran and Cabrera might have a decent shot to hit 500 home runs. I think out of all 4 of them, Cabrera is the most likely candidate to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. Beltran and Ortiz might have a shot, but Dunn, if he hits 500 home runs, I don't think he's going to go into the Hall of Fame, because under 250 batting average, there's been no player in the history of Major League Baseball or no Hall of Famer with 250 or lower as a batting average make the Hall of Fame, and he's not going to make it, Adam Dunn. And, this is one of the biggest milestones in sports to reach, is 500 home runs. And 300 wins for a pitcher and 3,000 hits for a ball player. Those are 3 major milestones for every Major League Baseball player. If any Major League Baseball player accumulates these stats, they're certain Hall of Famer, unless if they're linked to PEDs, which they're linked to PEDs, they're not going to be a Hall of Famer. And the 500 Home Run Club is a very prestigious club that only 26 players have ever made, and that's amazing. And that's about it for this blog, and I'll be back later for the third and final video blog of the night, which is about my personality profile. I won't tell you who, but it's going to be a big one. Bye now.